Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Tales with TR, episode 177B. My next guest wears many hats that stem from his success as a stand-up comedian. Hailing from the beautiful province of Newfoundland and Labrador, this two-time Juno Award nominee opened up for Jerry Seinfeld, appeared at events like Just for Laughs and the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival. He frequently tours Canada and has written for 6 seasons on the Canadian Funny Factory. This hour is 22 minutes, as well as create an amazing short film called Snowstorm Roulette, which was nominated for Best International Short Film at the Austin Comedy Festival. He's played a weatherman on Son of a Critch and is a lifelong Toronto Maple Leafs fan, proving much comedy is born out of misery. He is a funny fella, a gnarly Newfoundlander, a cool comic, a good guy. He looks good for his age and tears up the stage. He's a mighty fine bloke and tells a good joke. He rides a cool bike and is magic on the mic. He shoots for the stars and gets laughs and bars. Folks, Ryan Reeves won't score much, but man, he can fight. And welcome to the show. It's my buddy, Matt Wright.
Wow. That was great. I loved that.
That's what happens when you smoke a joint at night, pretty potent, and then do your preparation.
I respect that very much.
Speaking of, we're going to get into your background now in a second, but I might have a heart attack right now, and then I wouldn't know what it was like to open up for Jerry Seinfeld. When did this happen? Please take us through that experience, and then I'll start. My God, I can't believe that happened.
I'll agree with that in the sense that I can't believe that happened. That's like, yeah, that's the scariest thing I have ever done in my life. I will say that. It was at this big outdoor comedy festival called the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival. They do like 4 different ones. They did one in Halifax. That's where I was. I think they did one in Alberta, one in BC, with all different headliners. The headliners for my weekend were Anthony Jeselnik, Bill Burr, and Jerry Seinfeld. And I kind of opened up the Jerry Seinfeld show. Wow. So it was terrifying. There was like, I think the final count where there was like 9,600 people, like just an unfathomable amount of people. And yeah, I just went out and I did like 10 minutes off the top. Then Trent McClellan, another very funny comedian. He's from Cornbrook. He's on 22. He came out, he did 20. I went out and I did another 10. Introduced Mario Joyner, who is like Seinfeld's always like opener, so to speak. And then the lights went out, and he was there. But it was crazy.
My God, so he's royalty now in my mind. Well, Bill Burr too. They're both in my top 5, and then it would be Chris Rock, George Carlin, and Richard Pryor. That's my favorite comedians ever.
Oh, that's a great Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't. I didn't realize in that same sentence you just said Bill Burr. Yeah, I listened to his podcast too. That is wild. And 9,600 people. But I tell you, the first time I did it was in Oshawa, open up for Jerry. I mean, Jerry D. You're an actual comedian. I mean, I tell some stories. I didn't really know what to do. He wanted to write something with me, so I was up there in Toronto, and he said, "Yeah." I said, "I need some work," and he says, "Yeah, you're opening for me tonight in Oshawa, and I'm not a stand-up comedian," so that was quite wild. And I don't know, 5,000 there. But you know what's funny?
What's that?
And I'll stop talking about myself now. But so I was up there that summer, and he's like, "You got to practice." So I ended up opening up for him 5 or 6 places in Canada. I did here, and that was weird. But you know what I found? I was really nervous for start of it because I was like, and I remember talking to Mark Critch. We were at just some fundraiser on Dundas Street up there, and he goes like, you just opened for like I barely play places with that many people. Like, you know, not many stand-ups get to do that, and I just happened to experience it because I was opening up for Jerry D. But I remember going, and then, you know, so the summer I had to go down like the Comedy Barn and, you know, yucks on Richmond and get up there and do my thing. And I remember once there was 11 people. It was a snowstorm, and they were just like, they couldn't get into the concert next door. And I said, I used to say at the beginning, look, I'm a one-trick pony. I can tell hockey stories. If you're not into it, get on your phone. I won't be at all offended. And they all got on their phone. I could hear the water dripping. It was like, oh, fuck. Anyway, I found it. Point is, when there's a lot of people, it's almost like laughter can be contagious. In my short experience, only playing 5 or 6 big rooms like that, that was the case. I was like, oh, I don't want to say easier, because you come at it from a different perspective than I do. But I found that, it's almost, often easier to get a laugh. But,
so your instincts are correct. A lot of people look at it like, oh, the more people there are, the more nervous you'll be.
Mm.
And sometimes, like, for stand-up, I'm looking at it like I don't need in no juncture of my life do I need 100% of people to like me. That's not a rational thing to expect or even want, nor is it healthy. But so if I got 500 and I got 200 of them like me and they're rolling with me, that's a great crowd. The other 300 aren't going to kill that, right? So, but if you got, that's less than half. That's like Jesus, I'm not a math guy. It's like 30% of people. But if you got 20 people and you got 30%, you're like, that's a very uncomfortable experience. But the reason you do that, it's harder to do in the smaller crowds because it's like by the time you do enough of that, the bigger crowd is like, oh, this is the treat. The thing that you'd think was the scary thing. You're like, oh, no, this is the gift. This is why you do all those small shows and work out the kinks.
And every time you play, a bar or something, it's going to be like that. And you never really know. So I remember you told me this, but I can't remember the answer. How did you get into stand-up comedy? It was just, it wasn't like something you weren't like 11 years old. You might have aspired to do it, but the way I understand it, you walked up on stage or you kind of just jumped into it and had a fairly fast rise. I know a lot of comics that, and knowing that world, I did meet a lot of comics that, would love to get a chance to spread their wings a little bit. You've done it. How did you get into it?
Well, it's funny because like Newfoundland has a very strong history of comedy. Like comedians per capita from this province, as you know, it's insane. But I will say that in terms of stand-ups, that's not really the case. Like there's no Codco was happening. That's like an old sketch show for people who aren't from here or who don't know about it. It's like legendary. But like that was going on since like the 70s or whatever, right? I don't know any like 70s who were like Newfoundland stand-ups, strictly stand-up comedians. There was character work, there was sketch. So I never thought I could do stand-up. I saw it on television. I was like, oh, that looks kind of fun. And then I was like interested in writing and screenwriting. And then as you kind of realize once you start doing that, it's almost impossible to get anyone to read anything, let alone make it. And I was just like, stand up was there. It was available. I could make a phone call and be like, hey, can I do your open mic? And then people just say yes or no. And then you go up and you have it. But I had just been like, I did business in school. I realized like halfway through, I was like, oh, I'm not going to want to work in this field at all.
You did business. How did you drift? I went in not knowing. I had like, I said, it was 2009 and I gravitated. I got the folklore English degree, but a lot of it, honestly, like folklore was like I did a full course on stand-up comedy. I did a course on the history of pop music.
Oh, I did that course.
There wasn't that great. Like, there were layups.
Unbelievable.
How did you get in there? And that's what I'm saying. I didn't know what I was going to do, but the more I did those courses, I was fascinated. I loved it. And then, I filled in the blanks, 20 mains, 20 electives. My electives were like, same thing, like history, geography. I found them easy courses to get into, like true crime and stuff, But the other side of it, any of the math or the business was like, I took one course, business. I must have, what happened, Matt? When I was away in Tri-Cities, way back, I graduated a year early when I was 16. So 17, 18, we took courses the team paid for. You might as well take course. So I did have some business. And I remember saying, even if I sign a contract, maybe this will help me if I don't go on. It didn't really, but that was my motivation. So when I got back here, I qualified for this stats course. The worst experience of my life. I had no idea. And I just scrapped it and I went in and said, okay, I took like another folklore course and came out of it with a folklore English degree because, again, I'm not consider myself a stand-up comedian, but I look at it like many things like a comic would, I think. So how did you drift towards business of all things? You're an idiot. I'm just,
I sure can be. I'm not ripping
you don't seem like the type that walks in the door and says, give me the math wing.
Yeah. What's funny, my father is a math teacher. I was all right at math. I think here's a real, maybe a hot take, but I just decided to do business when I was, I don't know, I was like 16 years old when I made that decision. I don't even know who I was. My brain wasn't cooked yet. I was just like
Did you
a
have
young
any idea that you wanted to be a stand-up?
No, never considered it. Never considered it. But I also wasn't like, I'd like to be a businessman. I was just like, I don't know, you're supposed to pick what you do in university. So I just picked something that I was told was flexible.
Yeah.
And anyway, here I am. But like the big shift was like, I barely graduated. Well, not barely. I did okay. But like I was on no lists, was not a promising student or anything. I was a guy who graduated from university, but then I hosted this dinner at the end, like for my graduating class, and I was like, oh, I got some laughs, and I was like, that's the first time I've been good at anything in 5 years. I'm sure of it.
Wow.
So that was kind of just like, I was at the time like, oh man, I had just like gotten dumped. My grandmother died. I had nothing going on in my life. I was like, man, I can handle bombing right now. If I can ever, shit is already bad. Why not kind of take a weird thing? And I just started doing mics and kind of like taking any shows that I could. And I just didn't stop.
When were you? How old were you?
22 or 23 when I started.
Wow.
No, wait, no. I think it must have been 24 actually. I'm 35 now.
Which was, I was going to say, like 10 years ago. I mean, I don't mind asking you. Everybody can. I wouldn't ask if it's private, but everybody can find out now in the click of a button.
It's also like you're an athlete, so your age is just on the internet. So there. I feel like if anyone can ask, you guys can.
Yeah, true. It's on there. Yeah, all of the information. That's wild. So listen, you grew up in St. John's, right? Which school did you go to?
No, I grew up in Gander.
Okay, Gander. I knew you were from there. Growing up to me is an open, like there's stages. I mean, some people say they grew up somewhere, they left when they were 10. That's kind of what I thought Gander was for you. Okay, so you were all out there the whole way.
Yeah, I moved out there the year after, like when I graduated, I did all of my school there. My parents are both from Greenspawn, so I like spent a lot of time around the Bay when I was a kid. So that was like when in the summer I would spend a lot of time there. But then I grew up in Gander. I coached minor soccer a bunch. Like I played
coach soccer.
Yeah.
Took business. Had no idea you're going to be a stand-up comedian from central Newfoundland. I'm not saying Newfoundland. Get back to it. Gander isn't known for the arts, but neither are my dad's family's from St. Joseph's. My mom's in here, and my dad's like his father had like 12 brothers and said they're from St. Joseph's. My dad grew up in Grand Falls, but the same thing. I'll go into Grand Falls, and they'll tell me that they're not. Oh, I could never do that. Like never stand-up comedy, or we're not musicians. Yet someone will always break out a guitar. There's always someone telling a story and performing. I say to my dad, I'm like, you've been doing stand-up comedy your whole life, right in front of me. What are you talking about? Like, but that's it in Newfoundland. I think there's lots of people that they just don't think to get up there because they're just being themselves. They don't think to get up on a stage. But I've got I think we all have at least a half dozen friends that easily could take their best stuff and get up there on a stage anywhere on open mic. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And even like Grand Falls is like maybe an arts community, maybe not, but like Gordon Pinsent is from there. Right. Yeah, and like Gander, It's like maybe like, I don't know if the infrastructure is there as much as it would be in a larger place, but I think there's kind of like a little bit of a hack when you're from a smaller place. It's like, if you're just kind of energetic and interested, you can, and you haven't, all you need is like really 3 or 4 friends who are into the same thing that you're doing. So it's like, you can do plays, you can do whatever. And, oh, I love your cat right now. Anyway, yeah. But overall, like I will say, like there was no stand-up comedy. There was barely any stand-ups in St. John's when I started. There was only like, I think there was 10 of us on the circuit when I started. Now there's more. There feels like there's like, I don't know, like 50 or something. I'm not around as much as I once was, but like there was just like you could have all of us at a table when I started. But in Gander, it's like I was able to like, be in the play or do whatever you wanted. Like there was enough like good teachers kind of around that would, give you the training wheels, I think.
Which that's true. And but you guys are influential. It's very similar. Honestly, there is a parallel in the hockey world, and I'll tell you how.
Terry, pet your cat, man. Your cat wants your affection.
Oh, it does.
It's so cute.
I got two. So I've got a major. It's like a 9 out of 10 allergy to cats. But
oh no!
remember, when I was working on Republic of Doyle, remember the SPCA is right next to that building.
Yeah.
So my daughter came in one day, and I was doing locations. I did locations for like 4 or 5 years, which is, for those that don't know, you're on the outskirts. It's jump how high. It's good money. Yes, I was in the film industry. I never thought I'd be an actor for the first, like it wasn't even in my mind. But I would take my daughter in once in a while. She was fascinated. She was 5 or 6, and anyway.
Yeah.
I had one of the things was go over because the dogs would often be barking and go over, Terry, ask them how long the dogs are going to be barking. I'm like, that's really a question for the dogs.
Yeah. Because anyway, dogs care about time.
I know. Yeah.
Right?
Hey, dogs, when are you good?
Yeah.
That was it. So I picked up a couple cats and we moved into Mount Pearl and her mom moved away. So I took them. I just take 4 Reactin a day. I'm just like, I just can't. My daughter loves them too much.
Good,
and
man.
I love the cats. And they love me, but
no, that is clear.
The allergy is, it's uncontrollable. To be honest with you, actually, it's controlled right now. So
that's right,
controllable. But it
feels
that
ad
way
read for Reactin right now. Tales with Tiara is sponsored by Reactin.
You know what? That's who I should go after because I spend enough money on it.
Yeah. You know what's funny? You mentioned Republic of Doyle. I was also on Republic of Doyle. I think I remember seeing you around there. So that was like in between like the transition from like I was working like an advertising job to like I wanted to lean into arts kind of stuff. So I was an extra on Republic of Doyle for the last 2 seasons. But because I was one of like the police extras, they brought me in like every day, just threw like a bulletproof vest on me. Mostly I just sat in a room dressed as a cop, like writing jokes in a little notebook and like eating snacks. And then every now and then there'd be like an hour. They'd be like, go walk behind Alan Hocko in a pattern for 30 minutes. And they paid me for 11 hours. That. The best.
You're right, though. Most of the background that came in, the cops always came back. It was almost like you had a semi-regular gig there.
Yeah.
But anything else is like, come on in and be like a boxing fan. Or, today you're going to ride you're going to be a skier. But like with you guys, you were in there a lot. Yeah. I was going hard. I was set dressing and then locations. And then the last year I got into set dressing a bit. I really enjoyed it. Again, I had really no idea, but it's funny because when you're on locations, I would often go and some of it, especially if you're outdoors, is locking up an area, right? For those that don't know, so you don't want people walking through a scene when you got to take it 10 times. You'll have to have them every time and pay them as actors. Really, you don't want a car in the background that wasn't there the first time you did the scene. So really, you're on the outskirts. Sometimes there's not really much happening at all. You're just out there for. Just in case kind of thing. So I would always take out a pen and a paper and I wrote a short film called The Stand-In. And it was 8 or 9 minutes. I just knew because I did a couple of stunts and I was just trying to get into the union and I knew that no one would give me that role. So I did it and just sent it to a bunch of directors and ended up, ironically, Justin Oakey, a Newfoundlander, saw it. I didn't even know he was from Newfoundland. Put me in a fire in the cold season, and I won't say I was off to the races, but now I had something to go by, and
that's the start of it.
So, the same sort of thing. It sounds like you at some point you're doing business, but then if you're in on Republic of Doyle and you're writing stuff, now the door is open. You must have seen, okay, there's an opportunity. And I'm guessing you always like writing. Even if, like for me, I always liked writing. I don't think I went too long without creative writing to some degree, whether it was even in a little journal or a poem or something. So to say it came out of nowhere for me would kind of be not a lie, but it was subconscious maybe, but it didn't really come out of nowhere. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, like I would like writing and, but then it's, you think when you're 19, you're like, oh God, I have to try to be an adult now or whatever. So you kind of just put all that stuff aside. And then I kind of just slowly work my way back into it. And like I said, like being on a set like that, even if you're just dressed as a cop doing mostly nothing, just being around that energy of people making stuff, you're like, oh yeah, there's adults who do this. So that's a good feeling. I'm grateful for that, to be honest. It was kind of a memorable part of my life.
I honestly, at some day, I really enjoy writing. I'm too busy. Well, I guess in a way, I'm writing something all the time. I mean, I do have 2 books out, but
yeah,
but I
published 2
and I'm working on a 3rd. As I talk to you, I'm like, writing is good. As I say all this anyway.
Yeah. You were you literally last night you wrote a poem that had me and Ryan Reeves in it. That's never happened to me. That's
well, the other reason, to be totally honest with you, when I was younger and I went away and I'm an only child, and I was really nervous and it became a little bit of a security blanket because I would write and I would forget things and a lot would come out of me in the writing.
Right.
It would be funny little poems and stuff. But also, like, I had no brothers or sisters to bounce ideas off of. I go to Quesnel, BC. I'm speaking like Ted Hitchcock. I'm talking like this.
Yeah,
and they never heard. There was no internet. There was no globalization of the internet like that. So, like, it was just before that where every newfie, wherever you went, would be asked, do you live in an igloo and all that stuff. You tell a joke. This is true for people that don't. There's in one of your acts, you tell a joke about, you run into someone in Toronto and they say, you're not going to believe this, but I have a friend who has a cottage in PEI that he stays in the summer. And you go like, how many times did I get that and go, yeah, and sure. I saw a puffin in Nova Scotia one time. That's how close it is to your, like, to you, me being in PEI. We're talking about thousands of kilometers. You guys have anyway.
They just don't know, man. They don't like. But you know what? I used to get upset about it, and then, you find yourself in Saskatchewan. You're like, I don't know anything about this place. So,
well,
I don't have much of a leg to stand on. But I think it's flipped, like, for the newer generation, not newer generation, but like since the internet and stuff, the internet, and there's been so many Newfoundlanders on television that I get feedback. I would say when I do gigs on the mainland, I'd say about 25% of the time I'll get some type of feedback that essentially is like, you weren't Newfoundland enough for me. So they have this idea of what Newfoundland is that I guess that I'm not filling. And
I get that with the Ted Hitchcock. Yeah,
I'm sure.
Often. And people are like, why didn't you do this? I'm like, you understand that it's a scripted show. Like, you understand that, right? And I got no problem with it. I think it's great. Jarrett bounces the lines off me, obviously, but he writes it. Mm-hmm. And then, he hasn't been to Newfoundland. He loves Coldwater Cowboys. But half the lines that he writes is from that. So I said, like, I can't start dropping H's and adding them because they say that in other places. There's dialects all over Newfoundland. Sure. So I give him Townie and he likes Townie and I go with that. But you do kind of get that. And the funny thing is, when I was younger, it was a feeling of loneliness because it was always bittersweet. No one ever said it, at least, especially when I started dropping the mitts and I was on the hockey team. And, I wasn't necessarily getting picked on. It was, you stupid newfie, they would say newfie. People don't like that term. It's whatever. It's the way you use it. My friends, my teammates, sure. It was a term of endearment. But they would say it and it would be almost depressing, like, go like, oh, like this, this is a big screen TV. And I'd go, you're not being sarcastic here, are you? Like, so I know you're only trying to be comforting and nice, but the loneliness comes from, you have no idea where I'm from. None. None. I'm in Quesnel, BC here. Guys, there's a pulp mill. It's 10,000 people, like where my father grew up in Grand Falls. We have everything you guys have.
And to speak to your loneliness on that, this is still current, and I wonder if you ever feel like this when you're out west. Is if I'm in Toronto, I'm like, okay, everything is kind of fine. It's an hour and a half time difference. If I'm in BC, oh yeah, everyone, like, by the time I get off stage, everyone who I'm friends with at home has been asleep for 3 hours already. So I bet for you, a lot of the times, like, you would be like a late night, you'd be out there and you'd be like, well, even if I wanted to talk to someone at home right now, everyone's asleep. We're not even living the same life.
And you know what I would do? I would break out people. This is wild. Yeah, this is wild. I would take these. I always write in the journal and put some that I can rip the pages out. Yeah. That are easily rippable. I just always, in case. And I would just, some of the times I'd be writing and I would send a letter. Right. That's how much patience. Now we can't get through a YouTube video. We used to sit there, and I remember just writing a letter to my buddy Chris Pettigrew, Blair Connolly, Jeremy Charles, the chef down to Merchant. And that's, we would call each other once in a while. But the other thing was no cell phones. I couldn't take out, I'm talking when I was 14, 91, 92. And it was such a different world. And then, but it was BC. It was Quesnel, BC. So there was I was Canadian. There was at least a little bit of familiarity. I went from there drive yourself 15 hours south. Now you're in Kennewick, Washington, that borders Oregon.
Yeah.
No clue. I'll never forget it. My social studies / geography teacher, Mr. Schleffer. And he told me I spoke English really well, he said, for someone from Newfoundland.
Oh God, yeah.
And when he said it out loud, I said, and then I got up, we had to give presentations. So I got up and I said, I wonder what these people really know. So I made light of the igloo. I wasn't totally obvious about it. They would have seen it. But I said, people think we're in igloos all the time. I'm like, yeah, it was only like 2 months a year. You guys don't realize.
Yeah.
Right. And I started going and they're like, oh, I didn't realize. And I said, and the teacher really thought, like, he was so confident. I'm like, you're the geography teacher. I said at the end of the year, I swear, when they gave out the grades and I was leaving, I said, everything I told you in that was a pile of shit. I said, like, you're a geography teacher. And he thought New Finland was a new part of Finland. He thought it was part of Scandinavia.
Oh, my God.
And I was going, wow. Like, wow.
So that's a real, weakness in human beings in general. People hear a different dialect or something, and they're like, oh, that person's less smart than me. It's like, no, that's not how it works. A lot of the times, and this is like Newfoundlanders, we're speaking English. Like, don't get me wrong. Don't I know it? But okay, you think about if you ever hear someone and they're speaking in their second language and they're speaking kind of slowly and screwing up a few words, and people treat them like they're morons. And it's like, they're thinking and then speaking into a different, they're smarter than you are.
Yeah. I love how, who's great at it? I don't know if it's part of certain cultures to be able to adapt easier, but these Swedes and Finn guys in the NHL.
Yeah.
What is it? You talk to Marcus Naslund after 3 years of being, I'm dating myself there. He's 90s, 2000s, but anybody, I don't know, the Sedins
I remember
think of any Swede that or by extension Finn, but more Swede in the NHL. And by their third year, they're speaking fluently.
So Marcus Naslund, because he used to play on a line, I think it was him, Bertuzzi and Linden, was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my! See,
they were top 5 scoring one year, 2 of them at least. I remember that.
I think the Canucks have the Leafs now feel a little bit like the Canucks in the sense that you're these are undeniably great teams, but my God, they're not giving you the one thing that you would like to have.
Man, just think, Vancouver. We haven't won it as in Canada. We haven't won the NHL Canadian team in 30 years now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And 30. That's significantly more than a quarter of a century. It's a half decade, more than that for those keeping count. That's how long. And there's 7 of the 32 teams are from here. It's wild. It's wild. And twice the Vancouver Canucks have not only been in, they've gone to Game 7. And we don't even qualify it. I don't even think of it like that. It's like the Canucks have been shit for a long time. No, they haven't. No. They have been brilliant more than once. And the teams there that you just mentioned, they were good, but they weren't one of the teams that made the final. They made the semi.
Yeah.
Right? Fuck, they've had some great players. Mark Messier was there for 3 years.
Messier was there. Pavel Bure has to be one of the most exciting players to ever be on television. I'm sure of it. The Sedins, I still think are underrated somehow, and honestly, underappreciated as a story. Yeah. They're twins. I know this is obvious, Terry. Long? Forgive me, but they look exactly the same. And you're world class at a sport. That'll never happen again.
And say, I don't know, whatever. I don't know the numbers. How long did they play? They retired 5-6 years ago. So they played 16, 17 years at least in the NHL, because I remember Harold Druken getting bumped down when they came in. So that would have been 99, 2000. So, and I bet you in 10 of those years, at least, I could be wrong, if they played the games, barring injury, they were within 5 points of each other. Mm-hmm. And they finished very close. How do you play all that time? I know, first of all, I know you're identical twins. So, but to me, it's one thing to be identical twins and the science, you look the same and you might have some of the same tastes.
Yeah.
And if you run a marathon, maybe you'll finish within the same 10-minute clip as you. I get that. But how do you consistently play 82-game NHL seasons?
Always.
But it filters down, and once again, you're within 92 points, 91 points. 87 points, 84. It's fucking wild. They were like carbon copies of each other. And
same
great
mannerisms.
people in the community. Great people, great leaders, love the community, loved by fans. Gone. You don't even hear about them.
Mm-hmm. And like, in hindsight, maybe a hot take, low-key tough. I've always said there's two kinds of toughness. There's toughness you can give it, and there's toughness you can take it. And those guys, I always felt like took an absolute beating and showed no emotion about it whatsoever. I'm not saying that's the ideal way to play, maybe, but I do respect it.
It's a great point, and I'm telling you this, speaking of their countrymen, I played one game against this next player I'm going to mention, and I sat out at least two. So I saw with my own eyes how tough this guy is. I don't know if he dropped his gloves. People ask me about toughness. One of the toughest players I've ever seen with my own eyes is Peter fucking Forsberg.
Yeah.
He would go into the corner with anybody. You could not intimidate him. He was so strong. And he also, once in a while, if he was dumb like a fox in the corner. He'd hit you with the elbow and it would be an accident. But he was so strong.
Yeah.
Like I was, and battled and played through injury and played. And some
he was
of those
reckless too.
Yeah,
like he drove to the net.
It's a similar ilk. That's kind of what I'm talking about. They're different players. Obviously, they shoot different ways. Bergeron's naturally a little bit more finesse, but playing through injury, go in the corner with anybody and come out smiling, picking their teeth with a toothpick. Just a total joke. What I was going to say earlier, because I keep digressing, the parallels. So when I got drafted 8th overall, a few years before me was John Slaney. I think 5 years before me. He went 9th overall. John had to win and go to the SO Cup and get noticed. I got noticed in the Pee Wee tournament in Quebec, and therefore then they dragged me away. But there were always players here of the same ilk. Like you look back at the 80s, like Andy Sullivan played here. You know, I won't get into it, but he's a local legend that ended up playing pro in his 30s and playing sufficiently in the AHL, not the Southern Pro League.
Yeah,
picked up from working on the boats, you know, and went down and did a good job, like a formidable job. Andy Sullivan. Then
Andy Sullivan's son, Shane Sullivan, went to business school with your boy.
Really?
Great buddy of mine. Excellent guy.
I didn't know that. No, you know what? I played against him a lot in ball hockey. He's a great, I looked at him and you know, it's nothing to tell he's Andy's son. And pretty good hard worker. I got to know him a little bit. Yeah, he's a good guy. I didn't realize that. So when
Sorry, I got so excited I interrupted you.
No, that's good. That's what we're here to converse.
Sure.
I just forgot where I was going way back. I digressed like
You're talking about Peter Forsberg and guys who have unconventional toughness, I think.
Yeah. But that's before that I was talking about the parallels with the comedians on your level now. So in the 80s, those hockey players were there. The Newfoundland minor hockey didn't change. I mean, I guess you could we're always changing a little bit, but there wasn't some big revamping of the system. Right, there was great players in the 80s. Some of them got lucky. Todd Gillingham was one that went away, Darren Colburn. But again, these guys won and went and got noticed in Toronto when they're at a tournament. No one was coming here to scout. You know, it was, and so, but after me, then it was like, okay. And then the next year, Slaney, and then 5 years later, me. Now all of a sudden, the next year, Dan Cleary goes 13th overall. Mm-hmm. Then the next year, Harold Druken goes 30th overall. People are going, or 33rd. Now people are going, okay, so these guys from Newfoundland are either first rounders or second rounders, or we got nobody. That doesn't make any sense.
Sure, yeah.
They started to scout it, and after that, Michael Ryder, Ryan Clough, Adam Party, Luke Adam, and I'm just mentioning the NHLers. Now all of a sudden, like when I played, I remember in 94, 95, or 93, 94 was my first year major junior. I was the only player in the Western League from Newfoundland, and there was only 2 in the OHL, John Drover and Gordie Walsh. And within 5 years, there was 20 players playing major junior. And now, I mean, you talk major junior, college, junior, there's remember they used to have a piece in the paper, like Newfoundlanders playing away. Now it's too big. It'd be 4 pages long.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of, same with comedy. I grew up with Brian Aylward. He's a few years older than me, but Brian was always a funny guy, but I could be wrong. I don't remember him doing any stand-up. And if you were asking me the funniest people around in Mount Pearl, for sure he would come on the list. But I don't know him to have done stand-up comedy or anything, but he was definitely influenced by what you said, Codco. I guess early on, Kids in the Hall. I guess that was Atlantic Canada. I think they might have been influenced by Codco, to be honest. But, so you guys doing, and becoming, and by that, I mean, who's another young Mike Lynch?
Me and Lynch did started at the same time and did the basement at the Bella Vista in front of 4 people on VLTs. It was and Brian was around when I started, but Brian was already headlining, so I would go and watch Brian headline, and he scared the shit out of me. I actually think he's a great guy, but when I saw him, I was like, this guy's terrifying because he just looks like Newfoundland Stone Cold Steve Austin or something. And I was
when I saw him on stage, I was curious. Because again, I grew up in and around him and all his buddies. So I was like, what are we going to see here? It was a little bit different. I didn't know how to take it at first. But point is, I guess that, it was always there. It's just that you guys getting up and doing it. But, we always had performers that are funny. I can think of a few of my friends, same thing with hockey. I mean, when I played on the Mount Pearl Pee Wee Blades, people rave. I remember the one year, I think I had, let's just say 200 points. But I remember this guy, Sean Gibbons, who was a great player. He had 190. It wasn't. And now my dad took him. What happened was, without getting any further into my story, but I should explain that. So,
sure.
Tri-City saw me at the Quebec Pee Wee tournament, or Western. They were one of the teams, and they wanted me to go play with this Vancouver team. And my dad said, "Look, we should take a full team." Because you're not the only good player, and you mentioned Gibbons as one of them. So we all went, and 10 guys got scholarships or junior A or played major junior within years. Kurt Walsh was drafted 3rd round to the Buffalo Sabres. So that's kind of what happened. But so all those guys, they didn't come out of nowhere, and they weren't they were good. They weren't dominant over the whole, province, but yet we were good enough to get scholarships, play junior A, major junior. And same thing with, so you guys coming out. I mean, I'm not saying that, I'm not taking away from what you guys have done. I'm saying, but you've said it in a direction that now there's way more people doing it. I don't know if you want to admit that or it, but you go up now, you open mic. I mean, we had it at Turkey Joe's, for God's sakes, TJ's, and it's filled up right away. So there's all kinds of people now that it is an aspiration. It wasn't for you because you didn't see many people doing it. But I mean, that's going on a long way, but what I want to know, I started way back with this question, because it's one thing to do that, but another thing that you guys have inspired, including myself, is writing. Now, you got to write for 6 years now on this hour. How is that? What is the process? Do you guys go in a room, or do you go home with ideas, call them in, and then go into a room? Do you ever go into a room, or is it like Saturday Night Live, you present a skit yourself, and then how does it work? Your writing process yourself, and then with this hour.
Well, that's a good question. I'll answer this as quickly as I can, but it's kind of interesting because it's I did 6 different seasons I worked on there with a gap year towards the end of it. So there was when I started, I was only 2 or 3 years into comedy. I wrote up a little package and sent it in, never thinking. And then I got called in to do 1 episode. And then I just went and did that. And I was I did fine, I think. Not great, but acceptable. And then I just didn't hear anything. And then a year later, I got called back for 3 weeks. That 3 weeks went good. And then by the end of that 3 weeks, they had extended me for a season. And then I worked there for 4 years. The last 2 years, 1 year was COVID. So I was just on a laptop. So I won't get into that. That's boring. But it does change a lot. And I imagine the thing is, by the time, since I've been there now, I haven't worked there in 2 years. And there's a lot of new people there. So I'm sure it's very different, but I can speak to kind of we all lived in Halifax.
Okay.
So we were all living in this business apartment complex that we all lived in. It was great. It was super fun. Some of my closest friends I met there, and we just, for I think about 20 weeks of the year, we would live in Halifax. You'd go in.
Okay.
You'd go in and you would just write. You'd go in the morning, you'd pitch here's 5 ideas. Your boss would be yes or no. You go around the table, kind of riff around a little bit. Then you would go home for genuinely about 12 to 15 hours and just write 5 sketches, which is honestly, it's insane and probably too many in hindsight. But we had to write 4 to 6. Sometimes you'd collaborate, sometimes you wouldn't. Then you'd send them in. You'd usually go to bed at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes you just like have a beer and like shake your head and just go to sleep for 8 hours, wake up, check your email. Then you know which of the sketches are going into a book. So they read 50 sketches in a book. Well, it started with 50. I think they do 20 now. I'm really not sure. You'd have to ask somebody else. But yeah, so the cast would read those sketches. Some of them would hit, some of them wouldn't. And then they would go make those. They would go for the rest of the week. They would spend going to set, getting costumes, building shit if they were overly complex. Like sometimes, like the first sketch I ever wrote, I didn't realize this. I was just so inexperienced that I didn't know I shouldn't do this. But I had a baby and a cat and I forget like something else that was in it. And they were like, never do that. Like the sketch was good. Like I was just so naive that I was able to make it work. But now that I know the rules, I'd be like, oh, I would never do that because I made so much work for like the props. They had to cast a baby. I always think about that, right? Like there's a baby out there. I don't know where he is, but I gave that person its first job. Like that baby got paid money because my dumb little business school brain wrote a sketch that had a baby in it. And
fucking right. That's kind of what I wanted to know. That process, you explained it well, and I never ever would have thought of that. Yeah, you don't want to make this thing full of bells and whistles that are too hard to recreate.
Right,
but you wouldn't have known that going in. For those that don't know, this hour is 22 minutes. I don't know. I guess the show that I could compare it to is SNL, right? If just the one that's most popular.
Yeah,
with being a little bit of sketch comedy, but there's also like weekend updates stuff
right
going on during. So were you writing those as well, like the one-liners?
Yeah, so that is like, so basically your Tuesday is insane. Like your Monday is the day that you shoot the show. So like Tuesday is like the first day. That's where you pitch your ideas and you write your ideas and everything. You do the most of your work kind of in one compact period. Then that's done. Then on Wednesday, you would go to the table read. And then honestly, when that ended, by the time that ended, there was like a 2-hour gap in between the reading and them picking what they were going to make. And we would just like sit around and stare at each other and like eat pizza and just be like, Jesus Christ. So then they would pick that. Then you'd go home. Usually on Wednesday, you go out and you'd have a few drinks and kind of like recalibrate. And then Thursday and Friday is basically like you're filling in blanks for everything else. Like if someone is on the road, you write stuff for them. If someone is doing a piece at the desk, you have to pitch that. One person will take the lead. Everyone else sends them jokes. They compile it into something else. And then whenever you have free time, you would write what's called copy, which is just those little snippets of jokes. So I would write like, you would write probably about, I'd say by the end of it, you probably write 80 of them a week. And then they would use on the show total, I think, made the air probably 12 to 14. And there was 8 to 12 writers there. So it really taught me, and I still hold this, that I'm like, I'm not precious about shit now. I'm like, you need me to write you something? I'll write you something. Give me your notes, whatever they are. Because it's just like, I wrote, like, if you're having a great week, 85% of your shit's in the garbage. That's like a great week.
A great week.
Because
cut the fat?
Pardon?
Like, is it hard to cut the fat? Like, if I often find there's a lot of movies that go on for like 3 hours and something, and I'm like, at least 30 minutes of that was
every movie
really necessary. But I get it. If you're a filmmaker, you're probably. It's your baby, and you don't want to cut parts away. But I'm like, why does this have to be 3.5 hours?
You remember in the 90s, like all those Adam Sandler movies were 80 minutes long.
Yeah,
they were great.
Yes,
bring back the 80-minute movie. That's my hard take on that.
It used to be standard.
Yep, and now it's like God bless Martin Scorsese. You're one of the greatest to ever do it. You can do whatever you want, my friend. I'm not holding you back. But his movie that I'm going to see it. I'm sure I'll love it. Killers of the Flower Moon is like 3 hours and 45 minutes long. Baby, that's 2 movies.
Dude, it is. The next 2 I want to see are Oppenheimer and that. And I'm going to be in there for the better part of a day.
Yup. I did Oppenheimer and Barbie in the same day. And it was like I came out like I was like in a coma or something. It was great.
Going to, and I went to Barbie first and I was kind of tired. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to put in another 4 hours. Although I do like doing that. I grew up across the street from the Topsail Cinemas. So I Oh boy. Well, I went to Mary Queen of the World. We used to go over, and yeah, it was just that was a big part of my life, everything in and around the movie theater. But more than once, double feature, and a few times I can remember triple feature. Go in at 10 a.m., watch the 10:30, and then like the 2:30, and then the 5.
Oh, that's great.
Now speaking of movies, okay, I saw Snowstorm Roulette. Now it was extremely funny to me because not only do we know what it's like in Canada to be snowed in and have that snow day? Newfoundland is no different. We get, and with Newfoundland, it'll be mild like right up until Christmas, and then we get dumped. Right? You often look, it's a green Christmas. Oh, you guys get great weather. I mean, just a couple days ago, it was like 17 degrees, but at some point in January and February, there's going to be multiple, probably a week. We had Snowmageddon a few years ago.
Yeah.
So it's funny, and God, how many times have I done that? Just not a drag off or anything, but a guy or whoever, like we were at my house the night before and now we're snowed in and you kind of got to get through it. It's always a little bit of fun and then getting it. But that comedy, I really liked it, but I'm seeing it was nominated at the Austin Festival. I'm surprised the culture didn't clash, like that they understood all of the comedy. It was very Newfoundland. I think if you're Canadian, you'd for sure get it, but you'd miss some of it because I think Newfoundlanders would get all of it. And then if you're from Austin, not that people there at the festival are all from Austin, but I don't know if there's a whole lot from Northeast Canada. So, I mean, I'm just surprised that of all the places, that's where it got nominated.
Oh, me
what
too.
Was the feedback, and did they understand it?
So this is, and I mean, so basically, it's a short film I did through the Picture Start program here. Basically, it's like a one night stand that and as they're asleep, there's a big snowstorm and they can't get out. So like, I think that side of it, people being trapped, people get that. I think here's the weird thing: it did better in those markets. Because like we submitted it to everywhere, and it was really people who were just tickled by the fact that could happen. Because like here we're like, yeah, that happens, but in like it did really well in like Austin, Texas. They were like, wait a minute, it was like a fun. It's like I'm sure you've had this experience. Like, okay, you have a friend who comes here, and they point at something, they're like, that's amazing. But you, as a Newfoundlander, you never picked out that it was amazing. It took fresh outside eyes to be like, what a weird, cool thing. Like, I'm sure some of your buddies from elsewhere, you've had that. I've had that with a bunch of
all
comedians.
Kinds. Hey, dude, do you know that they go mummering in Philadelphia?
Stop it. Who?
It's the only other place that I know of. I was down there. It was after hockey, but not quite. Yeah, it was probably like 2007 or 8. I can't remember why I was there. I was watching the Flyers game. I know that. I think Aaron Ashton was playing there or something. But anyway, yeah, this parade came
former
through.
Gander Flyer Aaron Ashton.
Yeah, former Gander Flyer. You got it. Yeah. And I think he was literally playing on the Philadelphia Flyers at that point. But we would enjoy that. I remember even when I was roommates with Ash for a few years, junior, then Fredericton, then Montreal, and then every summer we were training together. But yeah, we went and we were in a tattoo place, to be honest, and there's a parade on the street, and I went outside. They're like, "Oh, the Mummers Parade." I was going, "What? The Mummers Parade?" And I looked into it. I got back and did folklore, and it's one of the only places in North America. But again, way back before the border and before all this technology, it's 17 or 1800s. People settled here in the 1600s.
Yeah.
So like from Europe, I mean, there was people here. Obviously, I don't want to get into all of that, but
white people settled in the 60s.
Yeah, I know, right? I certainly don't want to imply there was nobody here. But
no, I get you.
when they did, I guess Philadelphia is right there, really, if you follow the riverways and the obvious geography of it all. Right, and the population was only on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing out west for hundreds of years. So, no wonder that there's the same sort of people. A lot of people from there. And there's songs, Boston to St. John's. Boston, Philly. I don't know, Pittsburgh, New York. Of course, there's going to be a lot of the same people with the same ancestry. So it doesn't surprise me too much. And that was a long way, but yeah, all
same kind of
things.
Off-brand Irishy culture, a little bit. You see?
Yeah, totally. Well, Chris Nyland, he was telling me, he's like, you can't get too far in Boston without somebody having some connection to Newfoundland, including his grandfather. He was nearly here, right? Nyland grew up here. One of your ex, one one of your bits on the concept of being traded. Okay, it's funny. It's perspective, because when we talked about playing a big room, like, it was relieving to me. The reason I was so nervous for Oshawa when Jerry asked me to go up in front of like 4,000 or 5,000 people is because my experience had been like speaking banquet halls and everything. And you're not really hearing a feedback. And I wasn't delivering it like stand up. When I started to do now, right, as soon as I get back, I'm going to do Shoresy on Monday. And one of the weekends there, I'm going in Toronto and I'm going to give a speech. But now I get them. It's going to be a little bit more humorous and everything because I got the book. I mean, there's more there now that, people kind of expect that. But before it, I used to, and one of the topics was getting traded. And I'm like, you guys don't realize that you're 18 years old, you signed that, and immediately you can be traded. You do a bid on getting traded from like Subway in St. John's to like Quiznos in Winnipeg or something.
Yeah. That's it.
And I've often used it, but it's funny, the perspective. I'm not stealing anything from you, but the next time I give that, and I've kind of I heard you do that a while ago.
Yeah.
So I've explained that since in a little, I don't want to rip anything off, but I'm like, it's funny the way you deliver it because it's true. And when you do it with humor, I think it sticks home a lot, but it's true. People don't, I've been saying that for years. I'm like, man, I went away at 16 and my buddy, Justin Guy, who was my roommate, he was 16. He was from Grand Prairie, Alberta.
Sure.
And he got traded from Tri-City to the Portland Winterhawks. It's a big city. Like,
they shipped him across the border.
We're making $80 a week. He's not a pro.
Right.
Like, you guys have no idea what this feels like. The way you explain it.
Oh,
What's
it's
the name
true.
of that, by
and
the
people,
way? The name of the album is Existing is
Exhausting is the name of the album. I have a clip on my Instagram. It's probably the easiest way to find it.
Okay.
But like, I've always felt like this. I feel like sports fans, and maybe this is part of just but they just don't think about athletes like people at all.
No,
you know what I mean? Like, people are like, every time a guy loses the cup, they're like, he doesn't want to win. Like, what are you, nuts? This guy's entire life is about winning. He's so pissed off. Like, you don't need to be like, just because not everyone gets mad in the way that, like, oh God, I don't know, like Matt Cook used to. Like, if some guys are just stoic, they're not like, they're like, oh yeah, you think like everyone else is like Mitch Marner, for instance. They're like, oh, he doesn't want to win. Oh yeah, you think he loses for the fourth year in a row with the fucking weight of Toronto on his shoulders? And
you think he likes that?
Like, nice weekend I had, you guys. No, I'm sure he's rattled.
I said last year when Matthews had a good playoff last year, I was happy about that because I don't want to. If people are good people, I'm the same. I'm not a huge Leafs fan. My buddy Dave Roper's the equipment manager there now, and I'd like to see him get a ring, of course. But I'd like to see Canada win, okay? And I'm playing for the Habs. I get alumni seats there, obviously. Newhook's there. There's reasons for me to cheer for lots of teams. But when I look at the Leafs, I see, these are good people. Like Matthews, Marner, leading the ship. Tavares, people are like, oh, well, his contract's aging. I'm like, no, he's getting the exact same numbers. The contract, if you don't like the contract, that's 5 years ago now. But he's still doing exactly what he said he was going to do.
Yep.
He's not out there causing controversy. He's not calling his shot. He's not what would you rather, James Harden? Like these,
Right,
And when you watch Matthews last year, one of those games he tied it up and he went by the bench and the celebration was such jubilance, him and his buddies. I'm like, is that the face of a guy that doesn't care?
Yeah.
Like, why would you not care? Now, some people are naturally better in the playoffs.
Yep.
Some people learn. Maybe he'll win it when he's 30. I don't know. Maybe he'll win it this year. Maybe he won't. But not wanting to is different. Surrounding players with bits and pieces that might fit to adjust to their tendencies, that's different. If there's a player there that is a cancer, of course, get rid of them. But that's not the Leafs. I think they're, even Nylander, Morgan Riley, Giordano, these are good people that are good hockey players.
I think Nylander's perfect. I think his temperament's perfect for Toronto. I think it pisses people off. I think people get very angry about it. But I think you got to have that kind of like fine line between like the chillest man in the world and kind of when he wants to be like a dead-eyed psycho. Like, he can slice through like defenses like I have not seen another player have. Any other era of the Leafs, barring Sundin, he's the best player on the team. And it's like Toronto fans now, and No one is going to agree with what I'm about to say. Can I? We're 54
I'm going to qualify this with you're a Leafs fan, right? A big
huge Leafs fan. And you said you want a Canadian team to win. I do not. I only want Toronto to do that.
Well,
I'd rather the Atlanta Thrashers come back and win than watch Montreal win. With all due respect, don't get me wrong. As a man, I'm like, I want to see Alex Newhook win, but I'm just going to be a bit of it. But I think people have forgotten so fast how bad it was in Toronto. And and I'm not saying this again, these are just people, but I remember being like, I hope Mikhail Grabovski can put us on our back tonight. And I loved him as a player, but on a cup winner, he's the third line. He's your third line center, right? And I do believe that in the modern NHL, you have to have some stars, and then you got to get the right supporting cast, and then a little bit of luck and health and goaltending. So I really do think it is about just get guys who can do it, flip around the cast a little bit, and just knock on the door every year. I think it's your best bet. Nobody if you don't win the cup, it doesn't mean you're bad. 31 teams a year don't win the cup.
I know. I've often said it, man. It's wild. And seeing it's got to be pro sports in general, but I look at hockey and all these guys getting fired. And if you win the first round of the playoffs, that means you're top 8 teams out of 32.
Yeah.
And often, if you don't get beyond that, often coaches get fired. Well, we should have won it. I don't know. I know you got stars, so do they. The 2 best players in the league arguably are on one team, and they still haven't won it, not even close.
Nope.
So I don't know what people are expecting, and they see, Vegas come in and win, and that happened, and more power to them.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think that's a team from the top down, and you need a bounce.
Yeah.
I don't care what people say, especially with the salary cap. There's a lot of parity, and this part of the year almost doesn't matter. There's just get to the playoffs.
Yep.
82 games. First of all, without unpacking it, I think it's way too long.
No doubt.
Now it's just injury for me. Anything before Christmas, but definitely before the trade deadline, but before Christmas by extension. I'm just going. Please don't get injured. Please don't get injured. Don't get injured because again, 82 games, and you get to that. That's another thing. People might say, "Oh, he doesn't want to win." I'm like, 4 rounds of NHL playoffs. You don't think that motherfucker wanted to win?
Yeah.
He might not go out and drop his gloves or hit in the corner, but just going into the corner to get the puck on the fucking 22nd game of the NHL playoffs.
Oh my God.
Is fucking torturous, right? So, I mean, I guess my point is, I think by nature, there's 32 teams. Everybody wants to win. And tempers are short with players and with GM. You can have the best kind of a setup and a bounce goes the other way. Tampa Bay won that first cup, in this iteration a few years ago. And remember, they won the first round against Columbus, in overtime. It's okay, 5 seconds later, it goes down the other way, and Columbus are in the second round, and Tampa aren't. That's how close the fucking line is.
And the year before that, Columbus swept them.
Beat them, yeah. Beat them. Yeah,
this game is don't get me wrong, it's some of the most skilled athletes in the world, but it's also, you would know this better than me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the highest capacity for randomness. Imagine if you put basketball players on skates. You can't even use your feet the way a human being does. It's crazy.
Yeah, and so I love how they sometimes break it down, and you'll get a guy I do a lot of the Mondays and Thursdays. I host a sports show in Edmonton, Sports 1440 with Jason Greger. So you get all kinds of feedback, and I love it. That's what fandom is. I'm not knocking anybody but sometimes you tend to overanalyze it. So I remember it was last year and having to break down a play that Leon Draisaitl, he was on the goal line in the corner and he threw it up over the goalie's shoulder. And they're breaking down the system that led to that. And I'm like, guys, he had 2 inches to shoot it at. This is one of the best players on the planet. And you can't just have a practice and have a system that defends against that. Sometimes that guy, who's one of the very best on the whole planet at what he does, is going to hit that, and there's nothing you can do about it, right?
Oh, for sure.
Listen, I need to know this before we go.
Sure.
you're a comedian, it's your profession, and you've got so much. I just mentioned that with the the being traded thing, because it really hits home. Did anybody ever beat you to a joke? Like when I saw that, I'm like, oh fuck, now I can't kind of use it. But I swear I've only used it once since in the way you do.
Wild.
But I say Matt right though. I'm going, you know what? I used to, I make a story of it because it's still a ripoff. And
well, you're in kind of a gray area there too, because you're like an author, right? It's like,
yeah, you're right. And this,
if you're like one of my peers, I'd be like, buddy, no. Or not that you're not my peer, but like, someone who I'm around all the time doing stand-up with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to misspeak there. Okay.
Cool. No. Well, I went out with Jerry one time, and Jerry pointed it out. I forget this guy's name. I should know it, but he was a major comedian in the 80s and 90s, and it would all be like one-liners. So, and I remember I liked him. So when we went in to eat, my first junior game where I ended up putting hot sauce on my hands and beating the guy in a fight, I was 14. But earlier that day, it said
great.
Any breakfast. Yeah, I did. It said any breakfast, anytime. So I said, I'll take an Egg McMuffin during the Stone Age, please. And but it was an old joke by what I'd done. I'd liked it so much. I told you I write down everything. So I used to write down jokes, and I'd forgotten. I think his line was, I'll take pancakes during the Renaissance, maybe, or something.
Sure,
but but Jerry D had recognized it. And I was like, oh, no shit. I go, that makes sense, though, because I used to write everything down. And before I knew I was going to do stand-up, right, I got half my books are filled with George Carlin stuff because they're such great observations.
No doubt.
So if I ever, say it, I don't mean to offend anybody. Were you ever, like, looking at TV, say, and, like, had a joke planned that was going to kill and then somebody else did it? And you're like, I can't really go there.
Yeah. So, First of all, I'll say this. I think the fact that's so funny that you put hot sauce on your knuckles, especially since, like, I would say...
Yeah. I did. First
75% of your father's generation have never put hot sauce in their mouth, let alone on their knuckles. So I think that's oddly progressive in a weird way.
Oddly progressive.
Thanks for pushing the culture ahead. Yeah, I used to do. So it's happened to me a couple of times, and I hate to say it, it's pretty normal. I think it's just like, it just happens and you're like, oh shit. And then you just don't.
Especially in topical stuff.
Yep.
Right.
My first, I did a joke. I don't remember what it was, but one of my first sets, some guy pulled me aside. He was like, great job. This joke in the middle is a Bill Hicks joke. I would drop it because it's not your joke. So I don't know if parallel thought does exist. Sometimes you just have the same thought as somebody else. That's all you can do. But it's like once someone's got it recorded, it's gone, baby.
Yeah.
That's like when you were like, oh yeah, well, I did a kind of version of like getting traded. Well, like for me, I'm like, well, I already have that on the record, so I'm fine. That's no skin off my back, right? And the other thing is like, I had another one that I had a joke that I loved that somebody in my life had told it to me as a story, and I was like, oh, I'm going to use that, but I hadn't realized that they had taken it from a stand-up bit. So you have to be a little bit careful with, because you want to use your life, and sometimes you write stuff that's amazing. Sometimes something just happens to you, and you're lucky enough to be able to retell it, and that's great. Yeah. But overall, it does happen, and it's just constantly. For a while I stopped watching stand-up, like just because I was like, I don't want to have my brain too filled up with other people's premises and ideas, so I'm accidentally doing stuff because it happens to everyone. And then I think the ethical thing is you're just like, oh, I just won't do that again. It does happen, but it's a job hazard.
When I often, if there's anything though, I would never really, I make a point not to take a joke, but the setup, like when me and I think a couple of them, Kent Tilley and Kathleen McGee, we had to go out and roast Kevin Lowe in July. Like I had to roast Kevin Lowe. And it was me, George Larac, Craig McTavish, a couple of reporters from out there, Kathleen and Kent. But so say, I think on one of the Comedy Central, they'll say like, oh, hey, Kent's here. And in one of the comedy roasts, it was like the guy referred to, oh, so-and-so's here. I gave him the keys to my valet, like making out like he was a valet. So I was like, I said something about him selling me drugs in the bathroom. So it was like the same setup.
Sure.
But I was implying to him being a drug dealer as I don't know who it was. It was one of those roasts, like Jeff Ross and
Yeah.
And Greg Giraldo.
Greg Giraldo is a famous Patrice O'Neill, one of the greatest roast
Patrice
comics
O'Neill,
ever.
and they're
Norm
set up
Macdonald has my all-time favorite.
When at the roast, when he just gets up dry and just sits there through the whole thing.
And he just says, he's I think it was Bob Saget, but he's just saying, like, everyone is destroying Bob Saget, just absolutely destroying him. And then Norm goes up and presents borderline nursery rhymes as if they're the hardest hitting jokes. Like, he has a joke about where he's like, this man, he's for the birds. And it's like, but he's like he's just like dropped a mic. Oh, it's so good. And I love a roast joke.
And half of the people don't get it. Hey, when he's doing that, half the people don't get it. I'm looking at it. I know that's a classic moment. Speaking of, so Jordan Nolan and Brandon Nolan, who played two of the three Jims on Shoresy, so they love Norm Macdonald.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked Norm Macdonald. He was definitely one of my favorites. I loved his weekend updates. So dry. And he would often, I just saw an interview on Conan O'Brien and on the podcast, and he would often go after the stuff that most people wouldn't get, but the people that got it would love it.
Yep.
And he would choose that. Like, he liked that awkwardness. God, he was great. Okay, one sec here. Are you aware, we're going to go into rapid fire randoms now. Are you aware there's a musician named Matt Wright that looks a little bit like you?
No, I did not know that. I know that there's a crocodile hunter in Australia who's named Matt Wright.
Okay.
So I'll never be as cool as that guy. Who's a musician?
A crocodile hunter? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and if there was, it's this guy's not a rock star. He's like a dancey, poppy. I don't know, man. I just typed in your name, and a musician came up. I believe, like, it was Googleable, but I believe it took me to Spotify. I can't really. I'll send it to you after this. It doesn't take hurt. And I'm not saying he looks just like you, but it's like a white guy around your age, brown hair, around the same build. And from the side, if you didn't know, I would think you had a new album out. And it's fairly recent. Yeah, it's fairly recent.
Hey, man, no such thing as bad press.
Yeah,
somebody thinks I'm very well-rounded. I'm a comedian and a musician and a crocodile hunter.
Yeah, that is pretty. You could get away. If this were pre-internet, you could throw that on your resume and
I could
definitely get away with it.
The NFL season is going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking new customers up with an offer that's even stronger. Bet $5 on any game this week to score $200 instantly in bonus bets. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every game day this October. Get in on the game day greatness. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code THPN. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet $5 on the NFL. That's promo code THPN, as in the Hockey Podcast Network, only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours with promo code THPN and DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY, which is 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. Licensee partner, Golden Nugget Lake Charles, LA. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gambling resources. It may be too early to start decorating for the holidays, but it's never too early to start your holiday shopping. So why not take care of it now before the crowds and packed calendars make shopping a total nightmare? Especially when you can get some of the best deals of the season well before Black Friday. You can shop Raycon products right now and save up to 50% off. Yes, 50% off, because their early Black Friday sale is going on right now. You've probably heard me talk about some of Raycon's products on here before, like how great they are for listening to the Hockey Podcast Network or some of TR's music recommendations. Raycon first made a name for themselves in the audio space with products like their everyday earbuds, known for delivering high quality and thoughtful features like a 32-hour battery life or a perfect in-ear fit for all-day lasting comfort. And this past year, Raycon expanded their entire business with the introduction of Raycon Home and Raycon PowerTech. The Raycon Home faucet filter ultra filters the water in your tap against chlorine and heavy metals. It's a must-have for ensuring that the water you use to wash your face and brush your teeth is, actually clean. Or if you're looking for a great stocking stuffer, their 5-star reviewed Magic 180 cable allows you to charge iOS, micro USB, and Type-C devices 8 times faster with 100-watt power delivery. Raycon is known for delivering high-quality and thoughtful features at half the price of other premium tech brands. It's no wonder their products have racked up tens of thousands of 5-star reviews. To get everyone in the holiday shopping spirit a bit early, Raycon is currently offering 20% off everything on their site, with select products up to 50% off. So beat the crowds now. Trust me, you do not want to miss out on Raycon's early Black Friday sale. Hurry now to buyraycon.com/THPN to get 20 to 50% off site-wide. That's buyraycon.com/THPN to score up to 50% off Raycon products. buyraycon.com/THPN.
Okay. Just got a few more now. I call it rapid fire randoms. Do you mind?
I do not mind at all. I'm having a great time.
Okay, here we go. Matt Wright, rapid fire randoms. Favorite sports moment of all time? You don't have to be there to watch it. You could be before you were born. You could have been at the event. Anything. What's your favorite sports moment?
I'll give you 2.
Okay.
I will give you 2. The Olympics, the Crosby Golden Goal, too obvious. So I'll give you 3, actually. The Olympics before that, when Sakic, they're in the final, Sakic passes it to Lemieux, but Lemieux lets it go through his legs.
Korea,
and Korea finishes it.
Yeah, it goes through his legs. Yeah,
oh
that's a
my
great play.
God.
And it's Mario Lemieux.
Yeah.
Doing you knew that he just something. He was on that team. A lot of people questioned it. Every hockey fan I was going to leave.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck if he's on one leg. He's going to do something. Where he's going to do something, and that was his something.
Buddy, I'll put Mario Lemieux on the team right now.
Right now.
Yep.
Right now, me too.
Somehow underrated, I will say, Mario Lemieux. So I love that. I love so Frank Lampard, Chelsea player, played in his mother died the morning of the game, and then he scored the game-winning penalty. And he just walks up cold as ice, puts it perfect in the bottom corner, and as soon as it goes in, he just starts to run. And then as he's run, he just starts crying and he just falls down, and everybody. I have shivers thinking about it now. I saw it live. It's like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay.
Oh, and also the time that guy put on Adam Party's helmet in the Jets game.
Newfoundland shout out. Yeah, and, in the corner.
He looks
the glass
so
came
funny.
out.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I said, Pards, you are forever a part of hockey history. I mean, he is anyway.
So happy.
That clip still comes on all the time, man. Hey, when did he play in Winnipeg? 7-8 years ago.
Yeah. It's worth the Jets coming back, even if they never win again. That's so good. Sorry, it's rapid fire. Go ahead.
That's another team. They've had good teams. Death row meal.
Oh, love this. Steak, twice baked potato, mushrooms, onions, I think scallops with it. And honestly, just give me a bottle of red wine and a dozen beer. If I don't have to worry about being hungover, if I'm going out and I'm getting I'm going to.
That's maybe somewhere to go with that. I think that's a joke. Has anybody?
It might be.
That? Yeah. I never thought about it from the point of view you're not going to get hungover.
I never thought about that until you just said it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, boom, that's packaged for you. Go somewhere with that. Take it on stage.
I love it.
If you had one superpower, what would it be?
I think, Jesus, that's a good question. This is something I've genuinely never thought about. You know what it'd be? I think I could teleport. I think I would be able to travel without the bullshit of traveling.
See, a fantastic answer. A lot of people say flying or invisibility, and I can't argue with either. But
invisibility is a nightmare.
Other than the feeling of flying, which I think would get old, teleporting would be way more convenient. I've wanted to do that since I saw Star Trek when I was 5 years old. Like,
oh yeah, that'd be great.
Of all the inventions, I'm like, that would be cool.
Also,
can you imagine walking out that door and just like walking in to watch an NHL game?
Oh, unbelievable. You go to Australia, you could see what's happening in the Bermuda Triangle. Who wants, also, let me say this, who wants to fly uncovered in the elements? I don't even want to run outdoors.
That, you see, I think people say it without thinking.
Yeah.
Because the point is fast travel for most of them. I'm like, just teleport. Okay. In this world, you're not a comedian anymore. You've been cast out by your peers. You've stolen everybody's material. Matt Wright is a fraud. But one of the people that used to play for in one of these clubs in Mississauga, Yuck say, they want to give you a chance, but this time as a DJ. Now you got to pick your name. It has to be one of these names. Wright Fever, The Funky Punk, Boneyard Bill, for some reason, Boneyard Bill.
Sure.
Or Matt Bastard.
Oh, okay. Matt Bastard's good, but I don't think I have the right energy for it. I don't have the demeanor. So I'll take the Funky Punk. I think that's a good DJ name.
The Funky Punk. It sounds like a brand of weed or something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, you're in a hot air balloon.
What kind of horrible life do I have to be the DJ at Yuck, Mississauga?
Oh, yeah.
I think I'll just walk into the harbor.
Of all the places you could surface, you're now the Funky Punk in Mississauga.
Sure.
You're okay. You got to go LA to New York. Mm-hmm. Okay, you got to get there pretty quick. Planes are down. And for some reason, you can't drive. So you're taking a hot air balloon, which sounds like a novelty anyway, and you get there really quick, no traffic. But you've got to take one of these people.
Okay.
Ryan Seacrest.
Yeah.
Neil Patrick Harris.
Yeah.
Or Maria Branyas. Do you know who Maria?
Okay, so who's that?
Maria Branyas?
Yeah.
She's the oldest living person. She's 118 years old. She's apparently very healthy.
Okay. Well, man, honestly, I'd take all three. That sounds like a great time. But I'll take the 118-year-old person because I oh my God, I have so many questions I could ask.
Born in 1905.
God damn, predates the First World War.
Oh yeah, like way predates. Like in terms of human life. Yeah, like would have been cars were just being kind of not invented, but used.
Popularized, yeah.
My grandmother, before she died, my great-grandmother, I used to go to St. Bon's because my dad substitute taught there for a while. Then he got a job in Avondale, but I stayed there. So my parents would drive me from Mount Pearl to St. Bon's, 15 or 20 minutes in the mornings. And then after, I would go to my great-grandmother's house, which was close until they picked me up. And I used to have these chats with her that, looking back, were wild. And again, no internet to like connect us, right? And she told me, I remember like VHSs going like, this is wild. Like I can just, watch things now, like whenever I want, right? You didn't really, I mean, life was, if you didn't go to the movie and see it, you had to wait 6 months for it to come out to watch on TV or VHS was just starting. It seemed like the best invention. And I said, like, that's wild. Like for someone like you, this must blow your mind. And she said, Terry, I was born in 1899. She goes, we literally used to have to go and wait for the milkman. We used to take a horse to the convenience store 3 or 4 times a week if we were lucky.
Wow.
And that was the big journey. And she goes, by the time I'm 70, people are walking around on the moon.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Whoa, you're right.
Right.
She goes like, she goes, electricity had just been a thing. Like it still wasn't in all the houses.
That must have been a game changer.
Yeah.
Also,
right?
Can you call it a convenience store if you have to take a horse to it?
I know. Really, there's another bit.
My grandmother, she had the first color TV in Greenspond. And that TV, this is a huge generational shift. Not as exciting, but still fun. That TV was so big and heavy that when it broke, they just had to get another TV and put it on top of the whole TV because no one would move it.
No one would move it. Yeah, imagine all that trouble. They were like a ton. If you wanted a good TV, it would take like 4 people to wheel it in. Yeah, that's not an exaggeration.
No.
If you played pro hockey, what number would you be?
88. I had to think hard about this. I've not played pro hockey. I played in the Juno Cup this year at the Junos, and they let me pick a number.
That's where I met Jim Cuddy.
God damn, that's where I met Jim Cuddy.
Interesting. See, there's a lot of parallels.
Yeah, I picked 88. It's my birth year.
So nothing to do with Eric Lindros, just your birth year.
No.
I was going to say dog or cat, but you got 2 dogs, right? You do a thing.
I'm a dog guy, but I've got respect for cats.
Lou and Sawyer, or is Lou Sawyer?
Lou has passed, sadly. So we have Sawyer, and we have another beagle named Beasley now.
You get him at Beagle Paws, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's great. I've got the cats as mentioned, but I'm just gone so much. I can't have a dog. I always had a family dog, and always went Beagle Paws or SPCA.
Mm-hmm. Free dogs, baby.
What?
Free dogs.
Yeah. Well, then it ends up costing $3 or $4.
Oh yeah, they'll get you eventually. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I know. Okay, you got an album coming out. Your new album. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, I guess it's your next comedy album. I was going to say you're a musician, but you don't have to be. You have to pick one of these names though. The Right Stuff. A Hard Day's Right.
Oh.
I Want It Matt Way. Or It's Saturday Right, live.
I used to do a show called Matterday Right Live, actually. I like that.
Really?
Yeah, so
Matterday. I was missing Matterday.
Matterday Right was
so
fun.
close.
But I will say, oh yeah, those are some doozies. And original pods, I will say. I've heard almost everything, but those I haven't heard. Hard Day's Right's a good time.
Hard Day's Right. Yeah, that'd kind of sum up the picture. You're just sitting there like you got your pen and your paper. You after a day of trying to write 10 sketches on Jesus, what did we say? This hour is 22 minutes. Yeah, it's
Right.
A Hard Day's Right. By the way, the Beatles are back. New single video just dropped today.
I know. I haven't seen it yet.
Video is poignant. Song is poignant. The video is more so. Time machine anywhere. You can go anywhere you want. It's not going to affect history like the butterfly effect. You don't have to go back. You can go ahead. You can go anywhere you want in time for one day. Where do you go?
Well, I'm not going ahead.
True. I don't think there's much road ahead to go to.
you want fire or flood, baby? No, let's go backwards.
You go ahead, make sure it's in the next couple of years. You don't want to go beyond that.
Let me cheat a little bit. This is what I wish. This is something that I have always wanted. I would like to be a child, an unburdened child, and hang out with my adult friends now, but when we were all children. That's what I'd like to do.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that would be cool.
That's a good answer, Spring. These are spur of the moment, so that's quite interesting. A concert that you want to see that you haven't seen.
Easy. Bruce Springsteen, E Street Band, and I pray it happens next year.
Nice. I went. Yeah. I've seen him 4 times.
Really? Oh, I'm so jealous.
Playing for the St. John's Maple Leafs 99-2000, and one of the we were at a charity dinner, and one of the prizes was to go see Springsteen.
Oh.
So, but it was 4 tickets, okay? And one of the fans had bought it and was, I remember, pretty vocal, like, why is it 4 tickets? I just want to take my girlfriend. So I said, my friend, I'd love to take the other 2 tickets. And it was great because he sat behind the bench all year. It was a big fan of the team. Yeah. And we went up and saw it together. I took my buddy Mike Smith.
Oh, amazing.
He was in Toronto and saw back-to-back. And then when I played in Cincinnati, he also played back-to-back. And you know what, man?
What's that?
I stayed in my room. Like, my dad tells a story about meeting Elvis. And I'd always said I did the exact same. They had to use our dressing room in Cincinnati. I don't know why I never tell this story. I never said anything beyond nice to meet you, but I shook his hand by the craft table.
Really?
I just stayed in there, like worked out, like, they get in there for their concert and sound check and everything earlier in the day. So we had just had practice. And like, it was an hour and a half after everybody had left, but I just stayed. We got a weight room, might as well use it, right? Like, and I knew they were coming in because I could see all this stuff. So they had a craft table and he was coming in. I could tell he wouldn't be bothered. I want to get into how much I liked him. He hears that all the time, but I was like, shake his hand and share the energy of Bruce Springsteen. Why not? And so I did technically meet him. Okay. Second last question. You got to fire somebody, but you got to be eating a food, which comes off real pretentious. So you got to one of these foods you're eating while you fire somebody.
Sure.
Okay.
Wait. I need to know, do I want to be firing this person? Is this sad, or is this like someone's really grinding my gears?
It's sad.
Okay, shit. Okay.
Which makes it funnier.
So it's like a budget cut for a good employee.
It's a budget cut.
Devastating. Hit me with the foods.
Employee that maybe, hasn't really slipped up. Might have come in late a few times, but has a family, and you just have no choice. You have to
oh God. Okay.
But you have to be eating one of these foods.
Sure.
Okay. A cheeseburger, hot wings, steak, or watermelon. I mean, watermelon is light fluff, but I feel that would be such an insult. We have that big one. By the way, you're fine.
Oh yeah,
but wings, or they're all not great choices.
Wings is the worst. I'll say that for sure. Wings is horrible because it's like,
oh yeah,
you put the bones down. You could offer them one. Horrendous. Watermelon, you're evoking memories of a nice summer day that you'll now ruin forever. Steak is like a rich man's food. Cheeseburger is probably your best option, but this is a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
I'll tell you one thing. If I don't like the person, give me the wings.
Yeah. If you don't like the person, can you even? Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, by the way.
Or maybe the watermelon, you spit the seeds into the air to punctuate your sentences.
With your head dove into it. Hold it up with two hands.
Yeah.
Worried more about the two-hand hold of the watermelon than the actual firing.
Sure.
Okay. If you ever do another movie, that wouldn't be a bad.
Oh yeah, that's a good scene.
Please remember me through that. It could start the Snowmageddon one you did.
Yeah.
Whatever. It could just be at the beginning of something. You know what? I'm going to use this. Roger Maunder's been wanting to do a short film. I need to start a short film. Just that: eating a watermelon, firing somebody.
Sure, yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
Just for that.
That's a great question.
Alone. Okay. Last question. In this hypothetical world, you put together a team and I put together a team, and they're going to play, like, I guess, on computer, and someone's got to win. Now, there's $1 million in the middle, and one of us gets to take it. We don't have to pay anything. It's just prize money that's there.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pick 3 forwards, 2 defensemen, and a goalie, 1 line, all time. Hypothetically, these guys are all in their prime. Okay? You got to pick the best team that you can put together, or your own team, whatever, that you think's going to win. I guess it doesn't have to be the best. You could have Bob Probert there, who's not technically the best player ever, but certainly intimidating and might give Gretzky some room.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the dilemma that you got. You can't pick Gretzky, Howe, Lemieux, or Orr. That's the top 4 players ever, pretty much unanimous. You can't pick any of them, nor can you pick any Montreal Canadiens.
No one who has ever played for the Montreal Canadiens at any point.
I guess I'll give you, they can't be legends with the Montreal Canadiens. There must be players like Cam Neely that started there that became big in another city. Okay. You could take them. Okay. Nobody that's on the Canadiens honored list.
Okay. First of all, excellent question. Are we drafting going back and forth, or do you just want
money? No. You can just assume what I got. I just want to see what your...
All right. Connor McDavid.
And forwards can play anywhere. So you could have, like, I'm not telling you who to pick, and you've got a great hockey mind yourself, but I'm saying, like, you could pick Sidney Crosby and Austin Matthews if you wanted.
Right. So it's like the Olympics when I could put, like, a franchise center on the wing.
These guys will slot in the wing if they want.
Okay. Oh, man. I think my blue line, Nick Lidstrom is there. That's the first name that came to my mind that I am absolutely going to have on there. That's done.
Great pick.
Thank you.
By the way, Montreal would give us money if we asked them to train. Well, they would be assumed that we're going to train. You better train. But if we presented a case, they would give us money to go somewhere and train. So myself and Brad Brown would always take him up on that. We went to Brainerd, Minnesota. We went to Brock University for summers on end. And weeks on end in the summer. And we went once for a full month to Västerås, Sweden, which is where Lidstrom is from, and Tommy Salo and Peter Popovich. And we would The last two names not quite as prominent as Nick Lidstrom, but we spent a whole month with him there practicing. It was wild. Every morning up with Nick Lidstrom, man, feeding him one-timers and shit. Haven't talked to him before or since, but it was a great month. Anyway,
that's a perfect memory.
Yeah.
He was so good. Then okay, forward, I'm taking. Who did you take away from me? You know what? I think this is the hole in the game, is that there are guys who are not as good as Gretzky or Lemieux, but So, okay. But the modern guys, I think, given enough time, like Crosby's there. If I'm just picking best, I'm picking prime Sidney Crosby to win at any point. Obviously, if you got Crosby, you got to put Chris Kunitz with him. I'm just kidding. No disrespect to Chris Kunitz, but he was thrown on all those lines. I remember in the Olympics, and I was like,
yes, he certainly was. Wow, he was gifted. He's not a whole lot further separated from Ringo Starr in a way.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of luck, Chris. It was great. He played with him well, but if you're on Anaheim during that time, I don't know that you're.
Chris Kunitz is 10 years ago Zach Hyman. That's my take on Chris Kunitz, and I mean that with no disrespect to two great players. Okay, so you know what? I'm gonna put McDavid and Matthews on the wings. I think
that's fucking great picks, man.
Bedard,
with McDavid and Matthews.
Yeah. Matthews is really underrated defensively, I think. So so now I have to have another defenseman and a goalie. So goalie, I'm going Dominic Hasek, and that's without any hesitation.
It's the only one that I would. No, I think I'd take Crosby. I think if I was to think about it, I've done this 1,000 times. I think your forwards, I would probably agree with probably all three, maybe two, or it would feature those possibly, but the goalie would 100% be Hasek. You can't live through watching that guy and not realize how fucking dominant he was as a goalie. In this day, tell me the last goalie that even Vasilevsky, man, they're hot and cold. It's the nature of the game now. They're hot and cold. Fucking Hasek, lights out. Got Buffalo, who were average at best, right to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
And of course,
even stylistically joyous to watch. Because goaltending now is make yourself big and be in the way. Dominic Hasek is I'm going to fight through you. He was a blast. Oh, my God.
The last of his kind, I think, being so reflexive, Corey Crawford was kind of like that, he reminded me of not the same, but he's underrated. Crawford got fucking 2 or 3 Stanley Cups.
Mm-hmm. He was underrated. A lot of guys on that Blackhawks team kind of.
And by the way, I like how you mentioned that, because Matthews comes off to everybody as this wuss. I'm not saying he's the big toughest guy, and I do think that they needed to grow into it. And who knows if they got the sack to make it to the final. But I think if you surround him with the right players, yes, why not? And the reason I say that, another reason I didn't get into earlier when people say Matthews, I could not believe my ears towards the end of last year. I don't know if it ended like it, but it was 70 games in. He was leading forwards in block shots.
Yep.
What?
Yep.
What? And he barely, if ever, played the penalty kill where you get a load of those for a joke.
He's brilliant.
Fuck. I couldn't believe it.
He's a brilliant defensive player. Hockey fans, and this takes me time. If I was not a Leafs fan, I probably wouldn't see it. We can't wrap our heads around a guy who is so good at scoring goals, also being that good defensively. He's truly a unicorn. It's a very, very, very special player. So that's my goalie.
By a similar theme there, for years when Ovechkin was leading it, I was saying to people, but I thought the same thing. He wasn't and of course he's playing right wing for the most of it, and then over on left wing and finding himself around. He's not always, Matthews is putting himself at center for the most part and going out in a different situation. But Ovi would fucking nail guys, and I'm like, look, he just took him out of the play. That's defensive. I'm not saying he's a Selke guy, but I'm going. Ovechkin was very underappreciated. But yes, he's also fucking close to leading the league in hits, a unicorn in a similar kind of way, right? They're so good at one thing that they get no credit for another, even though they're leading the league, right?
And as an entertainment perspective, which hockey is, that's what it is. It is entertainment. You lose sight of that. Fun hits. It was never you always see some guys who you're like, oh yeah, he's got 4 hits a game. You never notice him. When Ovechkin hits someone, you're like, what did he do to him?
Yeah, I was one of those, Matt.
Were you?
Definitely. Oh, I was one of those. First of all, I rarely, I would never admit it when I played, but I didn't want to hurt anybody. I knew how open ice hits hurt, and I got concussed a couple times, and I didn't want to do that to anybody, and I didn't think there was a need. Along the boards, though, I'll nail you. I don't mind. but they would be finishing my hit.
Mm-hmm.
The point of a hit is either to put yourself between the player and the net and take that opportunity away, or to wear them down for the end of the game. So I was just the type, keep coming, and death by 1,000 pricks or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Wound by 1,000 cuts. I would just, and by the end of the game, get, especially the big tough ones that seem big and tough, they still get tired.
Oh, no
Often
doubt.
the bigger they are, the more tired they get. You just keep finishing. But I don't remember 5 big hits that would have landed on Sports Center, but I always was one of the leaders.
Right. Well, there you go. I mean, I think what you just said there, where you didn't want to hurt someone, I think there's a lot of, that's another thing that's like, yeah, you played pro hockey and people would never assume that, they would not think of a professional athlete to think that. But it's like, yeah, there's like, God, your athletes are they're just people. They don't, they're just people who are good at a weird thing.
And fight, like, honestly, like, but most, at least a lot in my era, I don't want to take words in anybody's mouth, but a lot of players, I'm definitely going to say the majority that got in fights, will tell you that more concussions came from those open ice hits.
Yep.
And I would often, like, I remember my first game against Brendan Witt wanting to fight him, like, and people are going, "What are you doing?" I go, "Well, if I fight him, though, he's probably not going to hit me because I can handle myself." So he'll be at least more hesitant. But I go, I can't be coming out of my own zone with my head one way, knowing that this guy is going to fucking eliminate me. Like, and so obviously in back of my head, I found fighting a lot less dangerous than hitting. Right. So, and I look, so point is, like, yeah, I wouldn't be hesitant to punch somebody. It was a fight then, and usually I was fighting bigger guys. If the refs came in, point done. The point is to get momentum again in a fight. It's not to hurt you. The point of me fighting you, unless you just ran our goalie, like very, very, very Blue Moon type stuff, unless something crazy, right? The point is to get momentum and get these fans and my team on board. I'm not scared of you, Cam Russell, So fight him and make it look good and stick up for get the energy up, and in the penalty box, hey, Cam, good tilt, but this, like, wanting to go out and hurt somebody, that's why you're all in a union, for fuck's sake. The other day, that guy Rasmus Anderson that took out Line, I think.
Yeah.
What the fuck? I would, honestly, as a member of the union, I would fight him the next game if I wasn't on Columbus, if I was just on any team. Like when that Sean Avery opened his big fat mouth about fucking Dion Phaneuf's girl.
Yeah.
There's certain things that, okay, I'm in a union, guys, and I'm fighting him right now. They exist. There's guys out there. I would have done it. That's the way I saw it.
I love that.
I used to, Matt, some games we'd play against other teams. Merrill Lemieux, I played one game against Merrill Lemieux, man, and I didn't get a shift. But I went over the pregame skate. I went over in the room and talked to him, picked his brain a little bit. I'm like, we're all part of this. Like, I can learn something from you. I don't have to say, fucking, I'm over there blowing Merrill Lemieux, but guys, I don't know. He's right there. He's 100 feet away from me. I'm going to talk to him. And the players knew. There was all kinds of times that happened. Marty McSorley wasn't always right. I remember going over and talking to Marty because he had a great perspective on the game. He knew guys I played with, like Bird Dog and Todd Gillingham. And, I remember him telling me, even little things. I remember McSorley going, you fought Domi? He goes, don't do that with guys like Tony Twist. The novelty is going to wear off and you're going to have your orbital bone broken. That, to me, was educational. Right? That's from Marty. Why? Even though it's Marty McSorley, I don't want to go on the ice and fucking spear him or hit him with his head down when he doesn't know. Right? That's just the way I looked at it. But anyway.
Yeah.
I think you've given us. You got one more defenseman?
Ken Klee. No, that's just the first name that came to my head. No.
Wow.
No, that's one of my favorite sports names of all time, though, which is a very different conversation.
Wow. That is.
Yeah, I have 2 answers. I'm having a hard time picking. And they're very different. The first one is Erik Karlsson. The last year he was with the Senators. That year when he was with the Sens, he was my favorite player in the NHL, and he played on the goddamn Ottawa Senators. It was one of
the year he made my favorite pass of all time in the NHL, where he stepped out from behind the net and put it over everybody's head to the far blue line.
Mike Hoffman finished it.
And Hoffman had to finish.
Yep.
And they were, not only that, weren't they like fucking bickering on like Twitter and shit?
Yep. And apparently their wives, I don't know anything about it, but like apparently their wives were in a fight or something. Oh, it's so spicy.
It was a beautiful play, man.
Yeah. That Senators team was like fucking Fleetwood Mac. Like they were making great things happen, but they were not happy with each other.
No. And then I remember in the midst of all of it, they got caught in a cab talking about each other.
Oh God, I felt so bad for them.
because that happens. How many times have I been in that position and I said to myself, holy fuck, I wouldn't even have remotely thought about being on camera.
Yup. Nor should you,
And
frankly.
And they'd had beers in them, right? Now, I remember no one said anything like, fuck him. He's like, it was just like, things that you say, but,
yeah,
just a bunch of players talking.
Sorry, 1 second. I'll let them know. 1 sec.
Oh, you can answer it.
Just give me a quick sec, Terry.
Of course. Okay, press pause.
Hi, Gary. Oh, good. Sorry about that. Apologies,
don't be sorry.
brother.
Right, it couldn't have been closer to the end. You got to come up with one more player.
Okay,
and go on your way.
Hey, are you going to edit this?
Well, I just press pause.
Oh, good. Okay, cool. Because
sometimes
I'll say my dog got out because it's a good excuse that no one ever asks what you're doing. So I don't want to.
Now you got your microphone up by your ear.
Oh shit. Yeah, we had a good.
By the way, are you a Jays fan? You had a Jays hat on.
Yeah, I'm a Jays guy in the way that like everyone, I was more when I was a kid. I was more of a baseball guy. To be honest, now I'm a bit tuned out to baseball in general. But I've always been like just a Toronto sports all around. So yeah, there's some. I've got some. I remember like. The most I was ever into baseball was the year that the Leafs had like the Jays had like Delgado and Sean Green. Like those years, I was like super into baseball, but I've fallen out a little bit. So so my other defenseman is Chris Pronger. The year that he was with the Flyers, and him and Bufflin were going at each other the whole time. So I'll take old grizzled Pronger to pair with Lidstrom, just because you got the one guy who can kind of wander around and just influence everything, and then a steady Eddie in the back.
That's great. So the only three of those questions that I asked every single person are the superpower, death row, and the last question there.
Mm-hmm.
And my instinct, I guess I've been asking that for 3 years, and most of the time as the last question. And my instinct was exactly what yours was: Lidstrom, Pronger, and then I couldn't decide between Pronger and Niedermeyer, and I picked Pronger because he was so big and tight. Trust me, one game I played against him in front of the net, man. That is, and if it was exhibition, I can't imagine him in a playoff hunt what that was like. But I mean, he was clearly good at it, but he was really way better, like breaking the puck out. Not just offensive. There's offensive like Evan Bouchard. There's offensive like Tyson Barrie. But he was just good, like he was just smart, like, coming out of his own end, like that breakout pass and knowing who to pass it to.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So
I won't say who, but there was a guy on the Canadiens.
Okay.
And I heard him talking. I heard him talking to the young guys. I said I hung out with Brad Brown. Brad was a first-round pick defenseman. And he was great at getting the puck out first. And I remember him saying, well, now, because Brad was like, well, high off the glass, or like, when do the game's a lot faster. The fourth, I remember him like, it was a breakout. So he's like, the centerman's coming and curling, and, the timing. He's right next to the forward. Do I put it off the glass? Or he had all these questions about breaking out. And Patrice, now I kind of said it. So it's Patrice Brisebois. But now I won't say who then. I won't say who the player was. But he was like, and Brad, it's also who you pass the puck to. So
right.
It's like, it was like he was just looking over at us. And it was like me, Mick Fakota, and like Trent McCleary, and then there was like Damphus, Koivu, Bure, fucking, and it was like I took no offense, and I was like, not that he was pointing at me.
Sure.
I think it was Mick Fakota at the time.
Okay.
And it was, I never thought about it from that perspective, but his point was like you could make the right play, but things are going so fast that it's got to be going around up here, like who you're giving it to. And I would put myself in that conversation too. You don't want to be, this is a rookie that just got called up. If you got two options and one of them is Mark Recchi, take the Recchi. Right. I never really thought about it. Like for me, it's just who's open.
Yeah,
right?
Me too.
I'm using my peripheral vision, and I'm thinking who's open, but it's often who you're passing it to. And it totally makes sense, right?
Yeah, defensemen will always the great defensemen will never get enough credit for how important it is to just make a decision early in the play that allows things to happen later. They'll never get the credit for it. They probably won't even get a secondary assist, but you just see guys do a little thing to get the puck, swing it back behind the net or something, and then the lane's open. It's like I will never, like an average hockey fan like me or something, like you won't see it and give credit, but it's so important.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know you're a big fan of the game, and you can point that out. I've often like the great players. Just to me, that's what separates them. Obviously, with Matthews and McDavid, and I could go. There's something that Bergeron we mentioned, and all the best players in the league. Right? There's a reason superstars are superstars, but then there's guys that adapt, and I just find it's all these like nuances. It's just quick little decisions. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I came to realize, at least really appreciate, and a guy I played with, Stefan Quintal. Mm-hmm. Stefan Quintal, now I think he has something to do with the Players Union, or he's a great leader. One of those guys in the room that was awesome. Like, that's why when fans get in on like who should be captain, I'm like, you should have nothing to do with that.
Right.
It has nothing to do with what, I guess it does a little bit with goals and assists, because that's part of leading. But I go, there's people like Scott Thornton and Stefan Quintal that were so great in the room that you just wouldn't know because they were quiet. But Quintal was a stay-at-home D that used to have a good plus-minus. And I'm like, that I have respect for.
Yes.
There's guys, I'll use Tyson Barrie again, being a Leafs fan, and I mean, there's more than just him. Morgan Rielly to a degree, but he's a little bit better defensively. But
he's gotten better with time.
See how a guy like that gets 60 points and comes out +7, right? Like, I get it, but you're wheeling and dealing on it. If your team's not quite as good, you might do that and be -13. But you show me a D that gets 13 points on the season and is +18, then wow, right? That means that you're not only stay at home, whenever people are talking about, like, you're out there for all these goals, and how great of a job must you be doing in your own end to not get in on any of that? But you're out there, right? I always found that to be, I don't, plus minus, like, you could be on a bad team and be -30, and it's really no reflection on your play.
True.
But for me, a stay-at-home D with a good plus minus goes a long way.
I love that.
And on that note, not that I'm a stay-at-home D nor you, but I've got to go, to be honest. Look, 1 hour and 43 minutes. I kept you way longer once again.
That's all right.
I like this.
I had fun. This is a great way to spend a Friday afternoon.
Plans for Friday night?
I'm going to go to dinner with the wife.
Good call.
I'm going on the road next week, so I'm, getting my ducks in order, and we're going to
Will you be in Toronto at all?
No, actually, I'm going to Miami, and then I'm going on a cruise ship.
With
just me.
Oh, just you. Oh, you're giving a stand-up.
Yeah, I'm doing like 2 sets on the ship.
Beautiful. Wow, that's a great gig.
Yeah, I hope so.
I've been on, took my parents. We used to do junior hockey. The team was nice enough to send us on a cruise at the end of the year, to be honest.
Wow.
And, I took my parents.
That's nice.
3 years in a row. Okay, buddy. This has been great. I'd love to have you back.
Sure, man.
Sometime, just to pick your brain, maybe. I got a few recurring guests that I know you have a good handle on the NHL in general, hockey, but just to have a chat. You don't have to be a hockey player to be on here, but it certainly helps to know your way around a team and be a fan, and also be able to shoot the shit about pop culture or whatnot. So I really, really appreciate you coming on here. Now, please, before you go, can you tell everybody your 2 CDs that I know of? Well, what can you promote? Do you have a website?
Man, I would throw everyone to like my Instagram. Probably seems to be the place that most people are kind of finding comedy nowadays. It's at Matt Wright Comic, so WRIGHT Comic. And I have 2 albums out, and they're called Existing is Exhausting and Here Live Not a Cat. But I'm always just posting reels and stuff on my Instagram. So if you're into comedy and you want to take a look, that's the place to do it. But yeah, thanks for having me, man. This has been a great Friday afternoon, man. I appreciate it.
I'm glad to have you. I said it a while ago, and I just get so busy. To be honest, I kind of forgot about it.
Yeah.
And then last week, boom, I said I got Matt Wright queued up on deck. So it was great that you could actually do it. I appreciate it very much, my friend.
Yeah, have fun on Shoresy.
Thanks a lot. If you're up that way, I'll be up there now November and December in Sudbury, and we go to Toronto every time we get a couple of days off to check out a concert or a game or whatever. If you're that way, let me know. And if not, I'm sure I'll run into you in the new year.
Yeah, fingers crossed, man. All the best.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it, my friend, and good luck.
Take care, Terry.
You too. That is Matt Wright. Check it out, folks. Honestly, those two albums I mentioned are awesome. Check them out. And I'm not just plugging him because he's a Newfoundlander. Trust me on this. Usually I get all kinds of DMs and feedback when I go out that, Terry, thanks a lot for pointing me in a direction with this album or whatever it is. And look, it takes 5 minutes. I look up Existing is Exhausting. That's my favorite by Matt Wright. It's only 3 years old, I think. And listen to it on whatever platform. If you got Spotify or whatever it would be, Podbean, I think it's out in podcast form as well. But it's an awesome album. And every single bit on it is funny. So check it out. He's, I would say up and coming, but Matt's been on the go now for a decade, I suppose. And real good guy, real funny guy. And I would only say up and coming because he's achieved a level of success that less than 1%, I believe, of comedians get to and writers get to achieve. But I think there's a lot more coming. And I do think his peak is hasn't hit yet. I think that the more people that hear and see him and what he's all about will definitely pay more attention to his stand-up. He'll gain fans as time goes, but the writing and and his creating and directing, I just think there's a lot in his future that looks absolutely bright. So thanks again to Matt. If you're downtown St. John's, I'm going to tell you some places that I want you to go for a beer, okay? Or a water or a coffee or whatever you're into. Just a nice atmosphere. You're going to want to go to George Street, right? So once you're on George Street, check out Trinity Pub, the Manning Brothers. Awesome spot, awesome feel. Live music once in a while. It's beautiful. TJ's Pub, more of a dance club, but we had, I used to run it. It's owned by the same people at Greensleeves and the beautiful people that brought you Greensleeves. TJ's, formerly Turkey Joe's, and it's got it's more of a dance clubby place, but a wicked deck in the summer, and once in a while some live music and comedy and what have you. Check that out. Rob Roy Confusion, Kevin English, one of my real good buddies, and it's been on the one of the places to go on George Street now for 20 years or more. Mostly university students, a lot of basketball kids. Kevin was a basketball player himself, and his brother Carl is probably, not probably, the best basketball player that ever came from the province. Played on the national team. Check that out. Carl has an awesome book as well on the market. I forget the name of it. God, what the name of that again? Anyway, check it out. Carl English. Greensleeves. Greensleeves Pub, man. Like I said, my go-to. Great live music, awesome food, good people. And upstairs, of course, is Loose Tie, where my ex-wife Danielle is managing now. And that's a great 5-star restaurant. Check it out. It's fucking awesome. And I'm saying this more out of loyalty over all the years. These people aren't paying me money to come on here every day. I was treated really well by everybody I mentioned on here. So to me, it's back pay, this advertising, and that's true. At least when it comes to this. Of course, some people play for advertising, just not the specific people I mentioned just then. Anyway, the Bull and Barrel, awesome spot. My favorite rock and roll hole in the wall on the planet. And the Martini Bar, owned by Pete Quinton, who's a good guy, friend, known him for a long time, and brought Alanis Morissette to the province last summer, amongst others. Concert promoter, great guy, always a good vibe at the Martini Bar. If you're going to go for a bite to eat, why not Merchant Tavern? Why not Blue on Water? Why not Wedgwood Cafe? Wedgwood Cafe also does catering. Contact Peter Wedgwood at Wedgwood Cafe for more information. If you want to work out, you want to change your life, you want to change in a positive direction, why not? Go to Ryan Power Conditioning, strength and balance for the body and mind on Rope Walk Lane. Check it out. You want to go to Mr. Lube, there's 2 locations. One on Torbay Road, 1 on Kenmount Road. Live, laugh, lube. Pitbull Pain Relief, the pain sticks that just don't quit. Check it out. I use them almost every day. PitbullPainRelief.com. And, of course, True Hockey. Take what's yours. I'll be using my True glove stick, helmet, and skates on the new season of Shoresy, which is coming up just next week. Not, of course, on camera, but for us to act, produce, and hopefully you'll see it on camera in 5 or 6 months from now. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. This has been 177B, Tales with TR with Matt Wright. What a guest, what a guy. Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome weekend. I'll catch you guys on the rebound.